am back again with another terrible podcast. Deary, deary me, the weather is absolutely fucking atrocious. I'm recording again from the driver's seat of my van, so hopefully the acoustics will be okay, because we have the added addition of heavy rainfall hitting the windscreen and roof, which will either be a hindrance to the sound quality, or it'll be a nice form of ASMR, as the kids put it these days. People make a career out of making those ASMR videos, which was born in the wrong generation, as everyone says, as this generation will say in 10-15 years time, when some other new crazy fangled way of making money comes around. I'm getting off topic, but what I'm thinking of, I just noticed on RT News the other day, they announced that some university, I think it's somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in Ireland, is admittedly it was a clickbaity title. It was like a university or college, university, whatever it was, in Ireland is the first to offer a degree in influencing, quote unquote. Now the degree is called something like degree in social media something. It doesn't say influencing in the title, but it is. Even they were quoted as, or one of the professors was quoted as saying, you know, there's a career in being an influencer now, and blah 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 blah. Anyway, completely off topic. That means nothing to a car related podcast. I'm keeping up the the consistent poor quality by making absolutely no sense in the opening minutes. In the car world, well, I have to start off with something that something I've rambled on before, and something that's not new to any of us motoring enthusiasts, but it's just something that really affected me the other morning. Lane etiquette on motorways, which, as I've said before, I can't entirely blame drivers for not understanding how motorways work, because you're never actually given any formal training into how they work. You pass your test. You're not allowed on a motorway technically until you pass your test, and then you pass your test and you're like, go at 120 kilometers an hour, on these multi-lane roads without any formal training. Excuse me, burping again as usual. But anyway, I was going to work the other morning, and I was in the lane 3, as you would put it, simply because I was going at the speed limit plus 10%, because I'm on my way to work, which is generally, leave it to the last minute to get there on time. So I'm in lane 3 because people are dawdling in the middle lane, which they shouldn't be doing. And then someone coming up towards my exit, I was like, so I had to pull in behind a row of 5 cars who were dawdling in the middle lane. But then, because they were dawdling, I couldn't cut into lane 1 to take my exit, because one, there was a semi truck coming up. A semi, it's a very American way of putting it, but an articulated truck coming up in lane 1, and he was going quicker than the traffic in lane 3, and I certainly wasn't going to cut up an Arctic lorry, 1, because it's dangerous, and 2, I can understand the frustration of that happening. Now I have my indicator on, he could have backed off a bit and let me in, but he didn't. So because of the people in the middle lane, I missed my fucking exit going to work one morning. I wasn't in a particularly good mood anyway, because it was a shitty morning and it was a Monday and I was going to work early in the morning, and that just fucking riled me up even further. So there needs to be some. I might have to make an instructional video for how motorways work, because a lot of people just don't seem to understand how they operate. Again, I'm not going to entirely put blame on the general public. I will put a bit of blame, because people like myself and plenty of other people I know who are into driving have an understanding of how motorways work without ever been given formal training. But at the end of the day, if it's a licensed, tested, what's the word, ability, or is that the correct turn of phrase? You have to be licensed and tested to drive. So why, we have to learn how to drive within an urban environment. Why is motorway driving just completely exempt. But yeah, you have to have the license before you can go onto the motorway. It's all very confusing. Anyway, I'm sure I did not communicate that very eloquently, but I'm sure you know what I was getting at. Anyway, enough of a rant there to begin with. What else did I do in my motoring week? Not a whole lot. In my local area, the other morning I was driving along and parked outside my former primary school, was a Volvo S40, the second generation, or whatever the last generation of the Volvo S40 was, that era. I was coming behind it. It was parked up on the side of the road in one of the parking bays along the road there near the school. And I don't know at what point I was cut off there. I got a phone call in the middle of the recording, which I assume cuts off the recording. What was I talking about before I got interrupted rudely by a phone call? Something to do... Oh yeah, Volvo S40. So whatever point I was cut off at, Volvo S40, parked outside my old primary school in a parking bay. And as I came up behind it, rather large dent in the boot. I was like, that's not great. As I pull up alongside, all the driver's side windows were smashed, and then when I got to the front, the whole front end had melted off due to an engine fire. So my speculation is it was stolen, joyridden, and excessive abuse caused an engine fire of some sorts, and then the whole front end melted off. But it was quite conveniently parked. So maybe it was just some sort of actual mechanical or electronic fault which caused an engine bay fire, and the windows may have been smashed subsequently by ruffian youths as it was abandoned on the side of the road. I will post pictures of said car on the Instagrams, car_nosaur, CAR_NOSAUR. But again, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already follow me. But anyway, I will post those pictures because it's quite a dramatic looking scene, and not an unfamiliar sight around where I live. To be honest, I used to, back in my Facebook days, I've been on Facebook in probably well over a decade, but back in my Facebook days, I used to have a photo album. I don't know if that's the thing on Facebook, but a photo album just of burnt out or smashed up joyridden cars that I would stumble across in my local area. But there you go, there's a piece of history you didn't need to know about. Did I see much good car stuff? It's been quite a boring car week in both my life and in the world, to be honest with you. So hopefully says you, this will be a short enough podcast. I saw a Maserati Biturbo Spider just today. I saw a C63 AMG Saloon, I'm not sure, W2, I don't know what the W number is for it, but the one with the 6.2 V8 NA V8, that generation, the best generation. I also saw a B5.5 Passat Estate, which is a great car, as others have posited in the past. The B5.5 Passat is probably the 21st century equivalent to the W124 Mercedes, and I would somewhat agree with that. A strong, dependable car, especially with the LPD diesel, which the one I saw had a PD 1.9 PD TDI Estate, as I said, but it was a 4Motion, which you don't see many of, and I have a quite a soft spot for them because a mate of mine has one, and he's had it for geez, when did he buy it? He bought it in 2008, so he's had it for, is that 15 years? Christ. He bought it on eBay, and at the time it's 2003, so it would have been only a 5-year-old car. He bought it from, I think he got a small inheritance from his grandmother passing away, so he decided to splurge on a 4-wheel drive Passat Estate. He has it on coilovers, so it's parked up actually for the last few years because he currently has an Audi RS4 Avant B7 with the 4.2 V8. And it's been parked up. When he parked it up, it had 235,000 miles on it. And there was the usual rust spots on the arches and on the tailgate creeping in, and it did need a bit of TLC when it was parked up, and it's been parked up for a couple 2-3 years. He really must get it back on the road. So I sent him the pictures of that one I saw today, which hopefully will give him some motivation to sort it out, because it's a great car. Me and him drove it around Europe one summer, and took in loads of cities, took in Le Mans back in 2013. He's driven it to the Arctic Circle, and like, yeah, so when he bought it, it had 60 odd thousand miles, and I say now it's got 235. So you know, it's got plenty of stories to tell. Great cars. I don't think I really saw anything particularly exciting other than that. No, not that I can think of. It was my birthday at the weekend. Not that anyone cares about that really. But as I mentioned, I think in the previous podcast, I went to the National on the Thursday. My birthday was on the Sunday. Went to the National on the Thursday, which was great. Rain's getting very heavy now, as I'm sure you can hear. Great concert. They played for like 2.5 hours, and they're really on form. Absolutely spectacular. And then I went to the Boozer, the Bottle Tower, which I've never been to. The Bottle Tower in Churchtown. Pretty cool pub, to be honest with you. To watch the rugby with a few mates. Had a feed full of points. Match was great. I'm sure you all watched it. Rugby being one of those games where if it's a close, low scoring game, usually means it's a pretty intense affair, as it was. We were lucky, I think, at points. Their kicking game wasn't great. They missed a good few drop kicks, if that's what they're called. I'm not a sports person. But also our lineouts, especially in the first half, really let us down. So yeah, probably the most difficult game we have all World Cup. Unless we meet South Africa again in the final, which isn't impossible. And if that's the case, I think they'll be gunning for blood, us having beat them the first time round. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, it was my birthday weekend. So on the Sunday, hungover as I was, I decided to treat myself to a large amount of sushi. And when I went to go pick it up, I got into my mother's Micra, and as soon as I turned on the ignition, now I must have programmed this in at some point, but I turned on the ignition, and you may have seen this on my Instagram, but a little graphic on the central display came up of a birthday cake, and it wished me happy birthday, which is both sad and nice, all wrapped in one. Yeah, so that's really been my motoring week. Nothing particularly spectacular. What's been going on in the world of the car? Journos have finally got their hands. Well, I say finally. It was only announced not so long ago. But Journos got their hands on the 911 ST. Would you call it the GT3 ST? Because it is built by the GT department. I don't think it's officially called the GT3 anyway. 911 ST. It's this, since the 997 generation, there's always been a cherry on the cake of the 911 range. We obviously had the 4-litre RS in the 997, and in the 991 there was the OR, which evolved essentially into the Touring, and then this, now we have the ST. That's a quick rundown if you're not obviously already aware. It's a GT3 Touring body essentially, but with lightweight components, with the RS engine, manual gearbox only, stuff like it doesn't have the active rear wheel steer to make it much lighter. Anyway, long and short of it, it's the lightest, most powerful 911 ever. I think that's probably true. And anyway, I watched and read a few different videos and articles on those who have driven it, and shock horror, it's amazing. I don't think any of us had that in question. Very expensive. Would I have one? Well, it's a silly thing to posit, because one I never will. Now if I had the cash, and if my Porsche dealer was, I was close enough to my Porsche dealer to be offered one, I'd obviously have one, because it's unicorn status alone make it a special thing. But I wonder. Matt Pryor's video I watched, because he Porsche brought along a 992 Touring to the test, which seems odd to compare it against. But he did say it's a much nicer riding car, the ST, than the Touring, the 992 Touring. But then a lot of people say that the 992 Touring, because the 992 Touring has the same spring and damper rates as the GT3 RS, if I'm not mistaken. or sorry, as the standard GT3. Even though it doesn't have all the aero. Whereas like on the 991, I believe the Touring had much softer spring and damper rates to go with the Touring remit. Apparently the 991 Touring is the nicer car. I think Chris Harris highlighted that quite clearly because he had two of them at the same time, and he sold the 992 and kept the 991. Now that might also be because I think prices long term of 991s will be stronger because they were built in lower numbers, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, long short I'm saying it, would I have, would a 911, a 992 ST be much better of a car than a 991 Touring? It's an experiment I would like to find out, but I never will, because I don't think I'll ever be in a position to own either of those cars. Anyway, 911 STs, you don't need to take my word for it. Look up people who are much better and better qualified, because they've actually driven the car and they do this kind of stuff for a living, and will give you a better impression of what the car is like. Rambling again as normal. What else has happened? You see that Nissan design concept EV thing? It's essentially a Nissan version of the Alpine Beta thing, electric hot hatch thing that Alpine brought out there a couple of months ago. Because obviously Nissan, Alpine, Renault, it's all the same thing. So this is it's the same car underneath an overly powered electric hatchback, which when it goes into production will be much more toned down. But as a design concept, it's a funky looking thing. It's called the 20-23. I assume it's because it was launched in 2023. Yeah, funky looking thing. Has like scissor doors, which yeah, you know, can we really get excited about these electric hatchbacks? I struggle to care. But who knows? There are very well paid engineers out there whose job it is to make these things exciting, so we will buy them. But me being a Luddite, I struggle to care. The GR Yaris is due a facelift soon, and apparently it's going to have the 300 brake horsepower version of the 3-cylinder turbo that's already in the car, but the one that they put in the Corolla GR, which we don't get in this part of the world, that version of the engine will be put into the facelift version of the Yaris GR, if any of that makes any sense. So basically, the facelift GR Yaris is going to have 300 horsepower, but also it's been rumoured that it's going to be an automatic, which is controversial. Because one of the cool things about the current GR Yaris is that it's got a cool, slick 6-speed manual. Whether the auto will be an option and you'll still be able to get a manual is yet to become clear, but it's strongly rumoured that it might be auto only. Only time will tell. Hopefully that's wrong. And then probably one of the most important piece of actual important news in the last week was Rishi Sunak, that's his name, and the British PM announced that the UK's ban on internal combustion engine, the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles in 2030 is now going to be pushed back to 2035 to bring it in line with the EU, which might not sound like a very important piece of news, but a lot of right-hand drive car manufacturing happens in the UK, and even stuff that doesn't happen in the UK, which happens abroad. Any right-hand drive market cars that come here, what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is with the UK slowing down and then phasing out their internally combusted engine cars by 2030, that essentially means Ireland was going to have a ban in 2030 despite us being in the EU, because manufacturers were just going to stop making them, because they're not going to make them just for Ireland. We're too small of a market. So yeah, thankfully they've brought that in line. So 5 years longer for right-hand drive internally combusted engine cars, hooray, another 12 years. Well, not even quite 11, because we're nearly at the end of this year. Yeah, that's really, as I said, it was a slow week in the world of the car. As I always promise, this will get better at some point. I probably shouldn't do it while I'm driving, because it's kind of distracting. Me being a man, I really can't do two things at once. So F1, Formula 1 was on at the weekend. The Japanese Grand Prix. I didn't set an alarm because I'd been out drinking, but I did wake up at about 5 minutes to 6, because the race started at 6 a.m. Yeah, so I said, like, fuck it, I'm awake, I'll throw it on. And I was kind of worried that it was a pretty good race. Now, Max did run away with it. He won the race by 20 seconds, which in turn meant Red Bull wrapped up the Constructors' Championship. They're 6th now, and they're 2nd in a row. Well deserved. They built an absolute monster of a car, so they absolutely deserve to have won the Constructors' Championship this year. But yeah, like, further back through the grid, there was lots of great racing. The Mercedes obviously got quite testy with each other. Russell got by Hamilton early on out of the final chicane, but then Hamilton got him back, going down pit straight and then into turn 1. This despite Hamilton picking up a bit of damage at the start of the race when Perez hit him. More on Perez in a moment. And then they got quite feisty for a few laps. Hamilton quite aggressive, but I don't think he did anything wrong. He pushed Russell wide at, it's not 140 or one of the corners. I'm so bad with corner names. Yeah, and then, like, Russell, it's very, very hard to not dislike him. He's very entitled. Giving out on the radio about, like, are we racing each other, or are we racing the others, or whatever the fuck he said. But yeah, Hamilton stood firm, and to this, that and the other, with them being on different strategies. Near the end of the race, Russell managed to undercut Hamilton due to the pit stops, but then he was holding up Hamilton, and the Ferraris were catching up. So they ordered Russell to let him by. Again, he got really kind of bit moany about, but it made sense because Hamilton was quicker than him. And Sainz ended up overtaking Russell, and he would have got Russell and Hamilton had Hamilton not been let by. And Hamilton ended up finishing 4th. No, he finished. No, he was on the podium, wasn't he? No, he wasn't. He was 4th or 5th. I should write this stuff down. I'm not turning off the ignition now because I've stopped. Yeah, other stuff that happened. Yeah, so Perez. Now, Perez clipped Hamilton at the start, but not really his fault. He got squeezed out by Sainz, so he was kind of pincered. But then Perez, throughout the race, how many people did he clip? I've actually lost count of the people he ran into. He lost his front wing twice. I think he hit one of the Haas at one point, and one of the Alfa Romeos, and eventually got to the point where he got so much damage on his car they decided to retire the car, but he'd been given a 5-second penalty for causing all the collisions. So they actually put him back out into the race, like 13 laps down, so he could serve the penalty and not get a penalty at the next race instead. Not that it makes much difference because they've sewn up the Constructor Championship without him even scoring any points. And now it's just the Driver Championship, and going into that, we're going into the next race, which is in Qatar, and Max could sew that up in the sprint race. It's going to be a sprint race in Qatar. If he finishes first, and if Perez is 3rd or lower, I think in the sprint race. I think this person wants to get into their driveway, so I'm going to move. So like Perez really, in the early part of the season, obviously he certainly held I'm not going to say Max completely won the Constructor Championship single-handedly, but he almost did. He is going to be in the Red Bull next year, so it's pretty much been confirmed. He is contracted, but contracts aren't worth shit in Formula 1, especially at Red Bull. But he really would be worried because Liam Lawson, who's been the super sub for Daniel Ricciardo, and it looks like he's going to be in Qatar now as well, so I think he'll have done at least 4 races before Daniel comes back. And yeah, like Lawson's done really well, and then like Danny Rick looked like he still had it in the very brief amount of time we got to see before he fucking broke his wrist. But yeah, I think so. Like the only seat that is potentially open for Lawson is the second Williams seat, which again they haven't said they're going to drop Sargent, but he had a very messy weekend this weekend. Sargent put it into the wall in qualifying in Q1, which was bad, and then he hit a couple of people in the race, but most noticeably he tagged Bottas by locking up and just driving into the side of him. Time is running out for Sargent to have that moment where he gets to prove himself, because he hasn't really yet. People were giving him the benefit of the doubt there for a while, but yeah, the clock is ticking. But that would be the only real door open to Lawson. And Christian Horner, he wasn't even asked, will Lawson, can you come to an agreement with Williams to put Lawson into do you have anywhere that Liam can go in the grid next season? And no one mentioned the word Williams, but then Horner's response was, well, I think the only seat available will be the second Williams seat. And he was like, I don't think Williams want to take a driver for a year. So, long story short, what I think is going to happen there is Lawson will be test reserve driver for Red Bull AlphaTauri next year, with a clause in his contract that if he does that, he very much will be the race driver for one of the teams in 2025. So it'll be Danny Rick and Yuki, which is confirmed actually at AlphaTauri for 2024, and Perez and Max obviously in Red Bull. But I think if Perez isn't performing, and even if Danny or Yuki aren't performing by midway through next season, Lawson will be in to replace one of them. The way I see it, probably how it will pan out is if Perez continues the form he's been on recently against Max, they'll put Danny in, unless Danny has an absolute hopeless return. Danny in beside him, because I think they'll work well as teammates, as they have, they know each other pretty well. And I think at this point Danny would be, he'd be happy to play number 2, a good number 2, and take any spoils should Max not be performing at Red Bull. They'll put Danny in, and then they'll put Liam into the AlphaTauri against Yuki, because they know how well they're working together, and they already have a lot of data as how to benchmark the two of them. Anyway, going completely off topic, that's how I see. What else happened? The Ferraris did okay. They were 4th and 5th, or 4th and 6th. Or was it 5th and 6th? I really should look up the results. But anyway, the main thing is behind Max, it was a double podium for McLaren. McLaren have really been on an ascendancy since they brought out that upgraded car from Austria onwards. A double podium, so first podium for Oscar Piastri, which is great news. He's well deserved. He's been nipping at it for a while, and now he's got it, which is great for a rookie driver. He's the real deal, is El Oscar. And Lando proving how great he is, as always. So yeah, there was loads of great wheel-to-wheel racing, and it just goes to prove I think Suzuka is just such a great track. It's one of those tracks that they can't. They took it off the calendar there for, or was it they rotated between Fuji and Suzuka there for a little while. Fuji's a great circuit as well, but Suzuka's just, all the drivers love it. There's always great hype around it, and then when you just watching the cars race, it's been one of the best wheel-to-wheel races we've had this season. Since the summer break onwards, it's actually been a really good season. It's just the first half was very much a damp squib. So hopefully that's a good sign as to how things will go next year, but probably not. Max will just run away with it again. from the get-go. Anything else from the Formula 1? Oh yeah, Seb Vettel was at Suzuka. Turn 1 was turned into the B Hotel. The inside curb was painted black and yellow. And he set up like lots of insect hotels with the drivers. He got all the rest of the drivers to paint the insect hotels, and yeah, he was just there promoting all his biodiversity, blah blah blah. He obviously got asked the questions. Oh, do you miss it? Are you coming back? He said, obviously being here, I do miss not being in the car. He always said never say never, but I can't see Seb coming back to Formula 1 unless for some reason Daddy Stroll kicks Lance out of the team, which he probably should, because he's the reason Aston Martin are currently now lying in 4th, although they're having a pretty bad second half of the season. But the main reason they're 4th now in the Constructors' Championship is because Alonso's been fighting the challenge there single-handedly. So unless Daddy Stroll has to kick Lance out of the team and bring Seb in, to sit in beside Fernando, I can't see Seb coming back. He's still young enough compared to some of his peers to come back, but the clock is ticking. The rumor I heard is that he's possibly going to be in the Porsche hypercar in WEC next year, possibly just for Le Mans, but maybe he'll do a full season, and that'll be interesting. That'll be good to see. But yeah, so next race is in Qatar. It's a sprint weekend. Max could wrap up the Driver Championship in the sprint race. If he doesn't do it in the sprint race, he absolutely will do it in the main race. It'll take some sort of catastrophe on his end for him not to wrap it up in Qatar, but I'm pretty sure he will. As I said, it's going to take an absolute mindfuck for him not to do it. He has to score. He only has to score, I think, three or 4 points more than Perez all weekend to clinch it. And well deserved, absolutely well deserved. Him and Red Bull have absolutely run away with the championship. But Qatar next, it's not this weekend, it's the weekend after. And then we have, it's that, Austin, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, and then Abu Dhabi, I think, for the rest of the year. So I'll start wrapping up this now, because again, it's been terrible as ever. And I've been running for, what's the clock ticking at the moment? I've been recording for 33 minutes, so I haven't been rambling for too long. So I'll finish up with my normal stuff. My classified find of the week, up on Done Deal, so you'll find this fairly easily. An Audi 100 Avant. It's not a Quattro. It's a 2-litre front-wheel drive manual Audi 100 Avant. Doesn't say if it has an NCT or anything, and the pictures are terrible. It's almost like someone has their finger just above the lens, and they have the wide angle lens on. Unnecessary use of the wide angle lens, something that really, really annoys me. But it's up. It looks, what I can tell from the picture, it looks like it's in very good condition. They say it is in the ad as well. It's in Dublin. 2750. That's not bad for a classic Audi, and a classic Audi estate, which is the way to do it. I don't have a song recommendation this week, but I'm going to recommend, if you don't already listen to the Beyond the Grid F1 podcast, you should. It's very good. It gets great guests. But Adrian Newey's on it this week, and it's a very, very good interview. He's quite open and truthful about his past, present, and future. Great listen to an absolute legend of sport. He is, he is the most successful person in F1 history, if that makes any sense, because he has the most race wins and championship titles than anyone else in the sport's history. And then, sorry, that's not that. Instead of a YouTube recommendation, I'm going to give you that as podcast. I do have a song recommendation. It's by a band called the Viagra Boys. All their music is great. They're just crazy Swedish rock band. But the song I'm going to recommend is called Troglodyte, because it's their most recent single. So check that out. They're a very cool band. So I'll wrap this up now, because it's been terrible as ever. If you have been listening, as always, I love you. And until next time, be safe, be well. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.